Egunon, buenos días.
Good morning and welcome to another press conference of the San Sebastian Film Festival. Today we present the film in the official competition. I'm going to say it in English because my French is not that good. I want to talk about Duras. And to present it, we have with us Claire Simon, the director, Manuel Devaux and Swan Arlot, the actor and actress, and François Artemer, who is the producer. To start with the press conference, please raise your hands, especially those people who have any questions. I would like to ask about the process of how you came to this film. I didn't know anything about the film. I like to not know anything before I get into the film theater to watch a film. And what surprised me very pleasantly was the idea of a conversation. And how did you go to take that direction? Or that, where does it stem from? What's its origin? This is the question specifically for the director. I read the book, a book which was published in 2016, and when I read it, I was quite impressed, enormously impressed. It was published 15 or 16, 17 years. I read it after the tapes were recorded, and I read it two more times, and I said, I've got a friend, I've got a theater director who was going to do a play about Duras, and I proposed it to her, and albeit she liked the idea, I said, okay, the ideal thing would be to do it in the theater. But I was also interested in doing it on the screen, in a film, to tell the story about that recording and that conversation, and to tell about that desire of Andrea of wanting it to be recorded. And above all, because it's a love story, that's what I wanted to convey. Bravo, congratulations. I thought it was an excellent film, congratulations. You can see watercolors which are shown. Were they painted specifically for the film, or did they already exist beforehand? Swan Arlot and Margret Duras is who we see in those paintings, the truth. Yes, they were made with ink. Yes, they were painted specifically for the film. Hi, good morning. I loved the film, and I would like to ask the director, Claire, Marguerite Duras is an icon. How do you approach her? Because she's an icon. And Emmanuel Devaux, I would like to ask you, how do you portray a role in a film that more than talking, you have to listen? You understand what I'm saying? It's been a long time that I was looking forward for a long time for a portray a role like this, to listen. I know when you start in theater, the actors, young actors and actresses, they can't live from the moment that it's important to be able to listen when you're a young actor or an actress, and I like that idea. Simply the idea of using your body language or your face gestures when listening. And I thought, yes, it was a role that I was expecting to be given, and it's not the same thing to listen to Swan Arlot or other person, but listening to Swan Arlot is marvelous, and to be able to live and go on that journey with him, albeit I had very little to say. And as regards to the question of Marguerite Duras, I love Marguerite Duras. I was brought up with her literature, but this is a film about Jean Andrea, about a text and it's the text which impressed me enormously when I read it. And with Swan and with Emmanuel, we've always focused on the text. So therefore, it's quite a paradox, isn't it? Because quite often in films we do adaptations, and we record things that are written in a text, but such was not the case here. Here, what we've done is make a film from a text, a written text, which we listen to. In this case, the text can be an emotional archive, or a file, or a true archive. The text contains the story and contains the people in them. Congratulations. It's a film that moved me. It's very interesting to get to know Marguerite Duras through that relationship. Yes, and everything we've learned about her. And I think it must have been very difficult, isn't that correct? But you've made a film which was very suggestive. But I have a question. The texts also talk about, well, they talk about love and death, eros and thanatos. To give oneself completely all the way to death. I'm not too sure, but that's why it moved me. Plus, to get to know Marguerite Duras and this issue, the issue of which also is dealt with in the film. Yes, you're right. It's not only a film about Marguerite Duras, it's a film about a love story, and we see that curve. The beginning is exactly how the medieval lovers and people fell in love, get right to each other like troubadours, and then the meeting, they get to meet each other, and that's where the climax starts, and everyone dreams with the perfect love and ends up destroying that love, or they live it in a certain way which is quite terrible. I was under the impression that the film, or that this text, was much more universal. And it's not only the idea of telling the story of Jeanne André and Marguerite Duras, and others like the producer, for example. When we all read it, I saw it as such. It's a love story between two people. But of course, all of that listened to by a third person, who in turn tells that story is told to, and could even enter into the story and form part of it. Can you hear me? Yes, I would like to ask the actor, how did you prepare your role, and how difficult was it to portray a role which is practically 100% of the dialogue is yours? I've had to work with the text, as simple as that. It's a very literary type of form of expression, and it's a thought pattern which it's a bit destructured or unstructured. I've had to work with all of these aspects to see where I started and finish the dialogues. It wasn't voluntary from the outset, but we decided to shoot, or we shot in a period of 1 month for several reasons, which. But we started shooting. I said, I can't. 1 month before shooting, I couldn't remember all of these texts, but I had headphones, or a little. Someone was reading the text into my ear through an earphone, and so therefore I didn't have to learn it off by heart, if you get what I'm saying. But constantly I knew, I had to know where I'd finished and what was the meaning of the sentence when I started, where it was going to take me, where I had to finish. And that was very important. It was very pleasant because I was able to release myself and free myself of having to learn it off by heart. So therefore, mainly, that was the work. As Claire says, we focused on the text. We didn't try to it wasn't the idea that I had to look like Jean Andrea. The idea was to say the text sincerely, and as of there, we were able to do 45-minute takes thanks to this system that we used. The film has two parts. There are 2 days of interviews, and each part we never cut. We did it from the beginning to the end, those 45-minute takes. And at a given moment, one is not portraying a role. We're obviously aware that we have a camera in front of us, but one ends up abandoning oneself and get into the text. At least that's what happened to me. Hi, good morning. I would like to ask the director whether she wanted to do it as a format from the outset, or from the outset did you already want to make it with actors? And that's making it sort of like a fiction film. Thank you. For me, cinema is cinema. And the documentary or fiction, that issue, and I say it again, the text is an archive, really, which contains, the text contains everything. That is to say, we have to deploy it completely, and that's the idea behind it. No, quite simply, what I wanted to do is to see and to reveal the text. Just simply that. For me, the issue of whether it's fiction or documentary, we didn't even address this issue. What's exciting for me was to work with Swan and Emmanuel. That's what I was excited about, and to come to the present, because cinema is always in the present tense. So we wanted to achieve something that was 100% in the present tense. Or give a life to ghosts. I don't know. Good morning. A question for Mr. Arlot, the actor. Before, you talked about how you prepared your role, and you talked to us about how you worked upon how to pronounce the text. But it's a very personal text, isn't it? I imagine you were very excited to talk about those so intimate feelings for a 45-minute take. Is that right? Well, I'm not going to answer in detail, but obviously this story is not my story. And in turn, when I read the text for the first time, when Claire sent it to me, I was under the impression that it was something quite close to me. And I thought, yes, well, that's exactly how it is. That's the feeling behind it. I didn't live those feelings. I have not had a love story with a woman who's 38 years older than me, and I've not had to confront and face these situations of whether I'm a homosexual or not. But from the outset, I said yes, and I did live something similar to that. And that search of what is absolute, which exists in love affairs, that is, say, the desire of wanting to belong to someone and to also want to kill that person, to feel fascinated and at the same time to feel weak. All of those dimensions, shall we say, I believe are universal, and they affect us all and concern us all. And that was the enormous power behind the text. I identified myself with the text, albeit in the details, that's not the story. I'm not too sure whether I've answered your question correctly or not. Good morning, Claire. I liked your film very much. I would like to talk about how you staged everything. That's say, what were the challenges behind it? For example, how did you shoot the film? So, and thinking about Claire Denis as Claire Simon Oh, sorry, excuse me. Yeah, my name's Claire Simon. The work of Duras as a filmmaker perhaps gave you ideas at the same time for making your film? Well, no. I have not inspired myself on the work of Margret Duras, albeit I think it's excellent work that she carried out. No, I don't do the same things as she does. The big challenge above all consisted in the conversation being a cinematographic moment, a scene, and not only two people who are talking, just like on TV or on a TV program. The important thing was to have the impression of being there at the same time. And on certain occasions, we were going to put the face of the person who's listening. We were guessing what she thought, and therefore I did all the takes and I framed it. And we designed all of the different takes and scenes. And then on some occasions, we improvised or not. The challenge was also sexuality. Well, we also wanted to demonstrate there was a true sexual relationship between both of them, as Jean Andrea describes it. And the issue was how to demonstrate that sexual relationship or portray it. And at the end, I thought that perhaps the best thing was to use those illustrations, those paintings, or that can show that sexual side, hugging, for example, and also see the faces and sex and the body and the same image. What doesn't exist in porn films, for example, and I would have. Well, I wouldn't have been able to film their faces if, for example, would have used porn actors. So therefore, sex, hugging, embracing was only something that I could think about using through those paintings with the illustrator Judith, who painted those pictures. We worked a lot, so we wanted to make sure that those paintings were torrid and had movement, and to show the full bodies, to talk about sex and feelings at the same time. So that was a big challenge as well. Another big challenge consisted in the Michel Monson's character, played by Emmanuel, had to exist, had to have presence. And inside those moments, we could see other things, like, for example, when I talk or when I'm listening to someone, I constantly perceive and see things and elements, and that's what I've tried to do as well, to show that who's listening is also making the film, is seeing certain aspects that are occurring, and all of that is connected and linked to what we see of the other person in front of us. And that was the main challenge, really. I'm interested also in knowing the film has the flashbacks, for example, is very interesting because we go into the past very little and the sound disappears in many occasions, and also editing, the use of archive material. How did you achieve that concept? Was it easy to have that idea of making this conversation, portraying the conversation through the explicit conversation between both characters? But how did you introduce all of those moments to illustrate some thoughts and feelings of the characters? I think it's what I've just said. For example, every time in the text there was an image appeared in the text, or there was a scene, well, I said to myself, well, okay, Michel Morceau, Manuel DeVos, at that moment, for example, I was thinking, well, perhaps, well, there's a port and it was raining in Caen, for example, and I thought that was interesting. Or she said, for example, she jumps on a bus and she goes in the bus to Entreville, and she's going to meet Duras, and Duras, and we've got to see how he sees the beach and he arrives with the bus, how that journey was taken. If I'd have only stayed in the scenes of the interview, we'd be missing something, I believe. So, for example, Agatha's extract, for example, and that is a very beautiful moment. The truth is, we see Duras and Gian Andrea talking, and this gives us the idea of seeing the love and in Duras's voice, her passion, and I think that's the climax, so to speak. These are elements. I was thinking all the time, what are we seeing? What do I see here? I see that scene, for example, when at night, and there were that scene at night, for example, we had to see it, and for example, in that night scene, for example, when I'm listening, I see him, but I also see those images as well at those scenes. It's another way of making a film, a way of, and it's a love story, but with fragments at the same time, hybrid fragments, but at the same time, that's what we live. That's how we live life when we listen to someone. That's what I've tried to portray in the film. Okay, we have to finish now, but we have one final question. Yes, a question for the director. You said beforehand that you were brought up with the literature of Marguerite Duras. I would like to ask you how you receive the influence of her works. What are you most interested in her work? And Marguerite Duras, is she a constant presence in French cultural life? Yes, of course. My mother already read Marguerite Duras, and this is what I associate to my mother. She didn't read too much, but she did read Marguerite Duras. She has a style which is very inventive, and the relationships between the colonies and the French Empire are written with an enormous charm. I'm not too sure. I think that she was a great woman author, and I don't remember, but I was brought up with her, but also other authors, and men and women authors. So I'm not a groupie. That's quite clear as well. Okay, unfortunately, we have to stop here because they've got a very tight schedule. But a big round of applause for all of the people that form part of this film.